Thank you everyone for joining us today. Since forming government just 6 months ago, our government has delivered on a number of our core campaign promises. Under the leadership of Premier Ford, our government has made life more affordable for Ontarians. We've put more money back in their pockets. We've ensured our province is open for business, open for job creation. Critical to that is ensuring our next generation have the skill set and competencies they need to succeed, extending affordability to students, to our next generation. I'm pleased to join Minister Fullerton for today's historic announcement on tuition. Minister.
Thank you, David, and I appreciate all your hard work and contributions as PA, Parliamentary Assistant for the Ministry of Training Colleges and Universities. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. Thank you for being here and for your interest. Today, more than ever, access to good jobs depends on access to a good post-secondary education. Whether we are talking about university, college, or apprenticeships, it's clear that we as a province and a society must make sure that we keep the doors of opportunity open and ensure that our students know that if you have the grades, you deserve access to an affordable post-secondary education. And when I talk about students, I am talking about all students. I'm talking about guaranteeing the students and families in greatest need that we will be there for them. And I am ensuring that what we do is sustainable, so we can make a similar guarantee to the students of the future. And when Ontario's Government for the People was elected last year, we promised to put more money back in people's pockets. We promised we would help people get good jobs, and we have been delivering on these promises. When it comes to post-secondary education, a big question is whether the system we inherited from the previous Liberal government lived up to this promise to our students and their parents. And it is clear that they did not. Under the previous Liberal government, post-secondary tuitions were allowed to skyrocket to become the highest in all of Canada. And in December, the Auditor General confirmed what we suspected. Under the Liberal government, Ontario's student aid program had ballooned to the point of fiscal unsustainability. The previous government believed in handing out OSAP funding to some of Ontario's highest income earners, rather than focused student grants to those individuals who needed it the most. The result? Student enrollment remained virtually flat, while tuition rates skyrocketed year over year. And rather than challenge the post-secondary sector to make life more affordable for students, the Liberals chose to indirectly finance these tuition hikes via OSAP. The Auditor General herself confirmed that the Liberal approach was way over budget and yet still managed to underdeliver on their stated goals. We have to do better. And as the Minister of Training, Colleges and University, as a mother of 3, and as someone who has gone through the post-secondary education system myself, I genuinely believe there is nothing more important than giving Ontario students the best opportunities to get their education they need to succeed. And pursuing an education is critical for our students and their future in today's modern economy. Students deserve the best opportunities to gain the skills they need to get good-paying, high-quality jobs. And we know students and their families make great sacrifices to pay for college or university. For them, every dollar counts, and that is why I'm here today to announce our historic plan to make college and university more affordable and accessible for students and their families. I am proud to announce that starting this September, Ontario's Government for the People is introducing an unprecedented 10% tuition reduction at all publicly funded colleges and universities in the province. This first of its kind, across the board, tuition reduction will see Ontario students receive a 10% savings in their education. This reduction means significant savings for students and their families. And for a student attending an Ontario college, they will see a savings of, on average, $340, depending on the program. And for example, a student attending Conestoga College enrolled in a practical nursing program would see a $300 reduction in their 2019-20 academic year tuition. Students pursuing a general arts and science degree at an Ontario university will see their tuition reduced by an average of $660. For an arts and science undergrad student at the University of Guelph, they would see a reduction of $700. And students in many professional programs will see their tuition decrease more than $1,000 as of this September. An engineering student at Carleton University will see a reduction of $1,120. By lowering tuition across the entire province, our government is ensuring all qualified Ontario students will have more access to high-quality skills, training, and education. And while we are lowering the costs of attending a post-secondary institution in Ontario, we also have to look at the long-term sustainability of our funding programs. Instead of using OSAP to subsidize tuition hikes, we will focus our resources on the students in greatest need. Under the current program, students from higher income families were receiving grants just for applying, not because they had a demonstrated need. The Auditor General projected the program could balloon to over $2 billion by 2020-21. And further examination showed that the program is already costing taxpayers $2 billion this year. We cannot let yesterday's recklessness threaten tomorrow's students. It is up to us to restore accountability, trust, and sustainability to all of government, including OSAP. So we are restoring OSAP to 2016-17 levels to ensure it is both sustainable and available to the students of today, tomorrow, and generations to come. And further, we will take action to ensure the program fulfills its intended purpose, to provide support to students and families in the greatest financial need. All students matter, and their education matters. We need OSAP to be available to those who need it the most. And today, I'm also proud to announce that we are taking an additional step to improve post-secondary affordability. For the first time ever, the Government of Ontario is putting students first when it comes to their student fees. Student fees, on top of tuition, often called ancillary fees, can cost students anywhere from several $100s to $1,000 a year, and even a couple $1,000s a year. These fees often get allocated to services students do not use, or to support organizations they do not support. In most cases, students do not have a clear understanding of what these fees are paying for, or any choice about paying them. This must change. We are bringing predictability and transparency to the extra fees students pay at post-secondary institutions. Students are adults, and we are treating them as such by giving them the freedom to clearly see where their fees are currently being allocated. Starting in September, students will be able to choose which programs and organizations they want to support and be more empowered and informed about their own finances through our Student Choice Initiative. There are exceptions, and I take the health and safety of students on campus very seriously. A number of fees covering critical services will continue to be mandatory. Health and safety programs such as Walk Safe, mental health and counseling will be maintained and deemed essential. These changes are the right thing to do And we are making post-secondary education more affordable and doing so in a sustainable way. We are addressing the concerns raised by the Auditor General while maintaining the sustainability of the student financial aid system in Ontario. We are putting money back in the pockets of students and their families. And moreover, we are giving students a choice to decide where they spend their money. Reducing tuition and increasing affordability of college and university will help Ontario students get the education and training needed for the good-paying jobs in our modern economy. And the prosperity of Ontario depends on the prosperity of our people. The changes we are making are for the students, and we are helping them build their prosperity and their future right here in Ontario. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, we're going to take one question, one follow-up, please.
How do you expect colleges and universities to make up the difference in revenue with the tuition decrease?
I think the first thing to recognize is that the 10% reduction in tuition is not an equivalent reduction to operating costs for universities or colleges. It equates to anywhere from about 2 to 4%. Universities are autonomous institutions, colleges are relatively independent, and they will, make choices in terms of what they need to do. We're not prescriptive in that.
But will you be making up that 2 to 4%, or are you expecting them to absorb that hit?
Well, there's different ways they can adapt, and I have full confidence in our institutions, colleges and universities. They will be able to determine what they need to do to change, to adapt, and innovate. And we're calling on our institutions in a challenge. Let's innovate. Let's create a 10% reduction for students across the board, across Ontario, in an unprecedented historic reform. 10% reduction for all students, all programs, all publicly funded programs through colleges and universities. And so I have strong belief that our institutions will adapt.
Minister, will this make it more difficult for people to actually access OSAP funds?
Well, what we're finding is that under the previous Liberal government, we saw the government subsidizing high-income earners, people with $175,000 worth of income. And we're looking at how we do that better. How do we make sure that our students and families in need get the support they need? And that's what we're focused on with this reform, is students and families that need that support, that are depending on it.
So fewer people will be eligible for OSAP then?
All Ontario students are eligible to apply for OSAP. There's 440,000 students that have already been processed, and this is to make sure that we have an affordable, accessible student aid system that is sustainable into the future. The combination of the 10% reduction and making sure that OSAP is sustainable to serve future generations, students, families who need it the most. It's critical that we do that. The Liberals had put our OSAP, our financial aid program, on an unsustainable path. The Auditor General's report in December indicated that. It indicated an unsustainable ballooning system that was not going to be able to serve our students into the future. And we believe in sustainability and making sure our students and families with the most need receive the support that they need.
Minister Travis from Global News. Is the idea of free tuition in this province now dead?
Well, tuition was never free. It was never free, but I can tell you that across the province, we heard from students and continue to hear from them, even as a few days ago, saying that tuition was too high and something needed to be done. So the tuition reduction of 10% is $450 million worth of tuition relief for our students, something that they have been calling for. This is a reform to make sure that students and families in the most need are able to receive it. And in fact, the share of the distribution will increase from 79% to 82% for families. It might actually be 76% to 82%. So there'll be more grants going to families earning less than $50,000 or $50,000 or less. More grants going to those families and students.
The positioning of this announcement is that it's a good day for students in Ontario. However, universities are concerned about this 10% reduction and how they'll be able to provide some of the same programs and services. And also, it seems on the surface at least, there are significant cuts to who can qualify for OSAP. So how is it a good day for students in Ontario?
Well, all Ontario students are eligible for applying for OSAP. And what we want to make sure we do is that the students who need the support the most receive that. We're looking at an unsustainable program. The Auditor General's report indicated the costs had ballooned and that this was not sustainable. It was unsustainable for the future. And we need to make sure that those families and students who need it the most get the support that they require. We're looking at making sure that families that are earning less than $50,000 actually get a greater share of grant funding. If you look at the tuition reduction of 10% across the board, you will see a $340 reduction in tuition for students in a college program, $660 reduction for an average university program in arts and sciences. I mean, there's just so many examples. I mentioned the Carleton University engineering program. They would receive a reduction of $1,120, and I can keep going. Western University, the Commerce and Business undergraduate program will be reduced by $2,270. And University of Toronto, I have that information here too. York, one program will see a reduction of $3,890. Brock University, Master of Education graduate program will be reduced by $1,200 for 2019 and 20. Cambrian College paramedic diploma program will be reduced by $670 for 2019-20. Durham College pre-service firefighter education and training diploma will be reduced by $880. I could go on. And if we look at the ancillary fees, we believe in treating students as adults. They should be responsible and have the responsibility of, how their education finances are achieved. And I believe, I have three children, they're all adults, they were all students. Students are adults and we will be treating them as adults. The institutions, through the ancillary fees, they will adapt. But it's up to the students to tell the institutions what they want. So we're giving the responsibility to students and empowering students in their own education, in the finances of their education. And we want to work with our institutions. Our institutions are partners. But we also want to challenge them to innovate and give the responsibility and the empowerment. And our student choice initiative is a very big part of the ancillary fee and the cost reductions there for students. It's up to them.
Hi, Minister. Richard Southern, 680 News. I understand there will no longer be a grace period as far as interest rates are concerned. That interest rates will kick in immediately on the OSAP loan. I know a lot of students relied on that grace period because times are tough when you graduate. Can you tell me why you made that decision to get rid of the grace period?
Well, like I said, the 10% reduction is going to be very helpful. The student ancillary fees, the student choice initiative, this will be helpful. But looking at the situation with the interest payments, this is an integrated program. OSAP is an integrated program between the federal government and the Ontario government. In fact, it's the federal government portion that is for the majority loans. The provincial part is for the majority grants. And so if it's good enough for Justin Trudeau, we'll align with the feds on this.
And with the tuition reduction, a lot of the critics say that this could amount to larger class sizes, to universities and colleges cutting back programs because they're simply not going to have as much money. Is that not a concern for the government?
Well, as I said, universities are autonomous institutions and colleges are relatively independent. They can decide how to do that. But it is really a situation where we want to make sure that that 10% reduction, all students will benefit from that. We're also looking at the actions of this government so far, reducing hydro costs, home heating costs, gas prices, the LIFT program, so anyone earning minimum wage will not pay tax. and even freezing driver's license fees. So there's many ways we're acting to help students, their families, make sure that things are affordable for them, that post-secondary education is affordable. And we know that the OSAP program, the Auditor General commented on this in her report, it was not sustainable. So the tuition fee reduction is a way to make sure that all students across Ontario at every college and university that's publicly funded can benefit from this, and that the ancillary fees are a student choice initiative to give the power to the students to decide what is important to them. And I believe that students will make good decisions. We're treating them as adults, as they should be treated, and being responsible in their education and in financing their education. We want to make sure that post-secondary education is affordable and accessible now and into the future. It's our students. This is about our students. This is about our future. It's about the students' future.
Minister, the tuition cut won't affect the families who are already not paying tuition, given they were receiving these grants. And the scaling back of this program may make it more difficult for students in that middle to low income bracket to go to university. How does this help them?
Well, first of all, the 10% tuition reduction will be helpful for every student. The ancillary fees will help students. The student choice initiative will help students with their economizing and making sure that they're choosing what's important to them. Looking at OSAP, making sure that we have the funding available for students and families who need it the most. And students will be treated as adults, responsible adults in their own lives and choosing their education finances that are helpful to them. This is a package of the tuition fees, the student choice initiative, and making sure that OSAP is sustainable into the future. These are three pieces that will help students and families who need it the most.
And on the institutions, they are obviously going to be faced with less money now. Are you going to make any effort to make up that loss of funds in any way?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the 10% reduction in tuition in terms of its effect on institutions does not equate directly to a 10% reduction in operating funds. It's about 2 to 4%.
Yeah, but 2 to 4%. But will you make that up in any way?
Well, the institutions are autonomous, universities are autonomous, colleges are relatively independent, and they have funding from other sources and revenues from other sources. And I fully anticipate that they are capable and able to make adjustments. I will say that we do have a contingency plan for northern institutions. Northern institutions that may be more vulnerable. And we want to make sure that they have assistance if they require it. But that is something that we'll hear more about later.
Nico DeVepper from the Dialogue. I was wondering how this tuition decrease will affect OSAP eligibility for mature students.
So for mature students, what we tend to use the term independent students. In the Auditor General's report, she was very concerned about the criteria that was being used and the oversight being used for the independent students. And what we've chosen to do is, instead of 4 years, we will move the threshold and the ceiling to 6 years. But anybody who's considered an independent student right now will be grandfathered. But we want to make sure our OSAP system is sustainable. The Auditor General was clear on that. We are on an unsustainable path with OSAP right now, and that has to change. We want to make sure that OSAP is available for students now and into the future, and that the students that need it the most are able to receive it.
And how will that be affecting mature students who do not fall within that 6-year age gap?
Well, they will still be eligible. Each student and each family has unique needs. There is an osap.ca link to a calculator where students can find what they would be eligible for. But all students are eligible to apply, and we want to make sure that students who have the most need receive the support they need.
Hi, good morning, Minister. On the student fee opt-out, if a student doesn't want to, say, support LGBTQ issues, can they opt out of that specific program, that specific fee from their university or college?
Well, from my perspective, that's an important program, and I would encourage students to make those choices as they need to. I believe that there are important programs that students will deem necessary. There are essential categories for student fees, and there are fees that they will be able to opt out of. But that's up to the institutions. And I'll repeat, the universities are independent, autonomous, colleges are relatively independent, but this will be about students making that choice. But I believe there's many important programs that haven't been deemed essential that students will see the importance of supporting.
So as an example, would an LGBTQ program or group or club, will that be deemed mandatory?
That's up to the institutions themselves to decide. So.
But you're giving them the option to make that a mandatory program?
Well,
I'm under the understanding that that would be considered an opt-out or
what we're doing is making classifications of fees. So there will be the essential fees, and that involves things like health and wellness and counseling, things that will be important for the students. But there is leeway for the institutions to have say in that. There will be an opt-out option, so students can opt out of fees that they do not use, they do not see the value in. But overall, this is a decision that will be made within the student campus and institution. That's not what we're doing. We believe that they have the autonomy and independence to decide what will go into that package.
Given the hit in revenue that institutions are going to take from the tuition fee cut, are you going to commit to maintaining the current levels of operating grants?
I can say clearly the operating grants will not be reduced. Okay, thank you.
Last question.
Oh, okay, thank you. Hi, Minister. Christina Tenelia from CP24. Just have a question, considering that your government is in the midst of what your government is calling a $14.5 billion deficit, but the Financial Accountability Officer says it's closer to $12 billion, but it's up there. How is the Ontario government going to afford this 10% reduction?
Well, the 10% reduction is for the students. This is an initiative, a plan to make post-secondary education affordable and accessible to students. We need to make sure that the most, the highest needs families and students receive the support that they need. So how institutions, as I said, institutions, colleges and universities receive their funding in a number of baskets. Tuition is not the only way they receive funding. They have other means, and I have full confidence that our institutions, with their leadership, will be able to innovate and adapt. And we do have a contingency for northern institutions that may be more affected.
So you're saying it's up to the institutions to take on this cost and be able to make up for what is a reduction of tuition fees?
Well, let me be clear. The tuition fee reduction by 10% is a $450 million tuition relief for students. This is about the students. This is about making sure that accessible, affordable post-secondary education is there for them. And if we look at the skyrocketing tuition rates under the previous government, who then drove up OSAP costs to unsustainable levels, we know that it's important that we put OSAP back on a sustainable path for students now and in the future, and that we make the tuition fees affordable for students so that post-secondary education is accessible. This is a historic, unprecedented, positive for students. And again, I'll read some of the numbers. McMaster Physician Assistant Undergraduate Program will be reduced by $1,330 for 2019-20. Waterloo Engineering Professional Undergraduate Program will be reduced by $1,490, 2019-20. This is about an across-the-board, all programs for publicly funded universities and colleges, a 10% reduction. This is going to help students make post-secondary education more affordable and accessible for them. And the institutions are autonomous, universities are autonomous, colleges are relatively independent, and they have their funding sources from other buckets as well, and so they will adapt. This is a challenge that we've put out to them to encourage them to innovate and understand that we're putting students first. Students are coming first. And I believe that this will be of help to students and families, particularly those who need it the most.
Minister, my apologies. We have one more question.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Minister. Just a quick question. Did your office consult with any students or any of the universities involved in this cut?
Thank you. Well, you know, we've been consulting all along, and even before I was elected, we were hearing from students. After the campaign and the election, we heard from students. We've heard from students and various groups across Ontario about the high cost of tuition and the unaffordability of tuition. So yes, we have.
But specifically regarding this plan you're announcing today, did you consult students and universities?
Well, we've spoken in many of the instances to understand what the needs of students are, and putting students first is a priority. This is a government for the people. We believe in putting students first. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.